We're going to talk a little bit about how to navigate all the advice and all the opinions that you receive when you are looking for a new bike, whether it's your first bike or whether you're trading in and upgrading. So one thing you're going to do is you're going to try to collect data and figure out, okay, well, I need to have an understanding of what I'm going to be spending my money on. It's very natural to go to your friends, your community, people you trust, and you trust that they care about you and your experience. So they're going to give you advice based on what's good for you. Sometimes navigating that can be a little bit challenging, and there's a lot of nuance there. There's a little bit of psychology involved in that as well. Another great resource is YouTube, right where you are now, watching a lot of videos on a specific model that you may be considering. So one section of this is understanding the specifications of a motorcycle and what most people are saying that this motorcycle excels at, and seeing if that motorcycle fits into your lifestyle. Working at the shop, I've seen a lot of people come in groups or 2 or 3 people, and you do see a lot of what I would consider bad advice or just actually factually incorrect data. In addition to that, you also see a lot of people reiterating what other people have said in videos. So there's a little bit of a fine line of understanding, okay, is this an actual experience that someone is speaking from? Or is this something that they've seen in a video that maybe they don't have the experience themselves, but it makes sense to them, so they're going to pass that information along to you. Now, before anybody takes this personally, I think that everybody who is trying to help someone is genuinely trying to help someone. And I think it's really coming from the heart because they want what's best for you. A lot of times that can kind of lead into a thing where this thing makes me happy. It brings me happiness. And I want this happiness for you. So you should get the exact same thing that I have. And a lot of times what you see is a little bit of purchase validation. Like somebody will have spent money on their bike and done a lot of upgrades to their bike, and they're very invested in their bike. And so there's a little bit of they want other people to agree that they spent their money well and that their choices were warranted. When it comes to getting advice from videos on YouTube, most of the time these videos are going to be very objective when it comes to a specific model. And they're going to look at it and say, okay, well, it's good at this, it's not good at this, I like this about it, I don't like this about it. But it's still coming from a very personal place, so always keep that in mind. What you're really trying to do is collect as much data as possible, and then you're trying to look at the data that you've collected and say, how much of this is personal bias and how much of this are objective truths? Then you have to take all that objective data and you have to apply it to yourself and say, how does this apply to me? As usual, I'm always going to recommend that you keep an open mind and listen to your friends. If they're advising you and they're experienced riders and they know about this industry, definitely listen to them. You may have your eyes set on a certain model without seeing the big picture. Maybe you saw this bike on Instagram and you're like, wow, I need to find out what model that is, and you look up what model it is, and later you might find out that that bike is highly customized and maybe is in a different price point than you were expecting it to be in. And this is where an experienced friend can come in and say, okay, well, I know you and I know what you're going to be doing with this bike, and this bike may be good for you or may not be good for you. I think that's really valuable information, and I think the community as a whole really does a good job of supporting each other in those respects. So if you're the one receiving advice, it's very important to understand that there are some things that you don't know. They're called unknown unknowns. And that's typically what you're looking to educate yourself on when you start going down this path. And if you're the person giving the advice, there's one caveat that you always have to remember, is that what works for you may not always work for someone else. So once you get through all the nuts and bolts and you find out, okay, what chassis size am I going to be on? What are the 2 or 3 models that I'm comparing in between? And then you're comparing the price between them, the features between them. You're leaning on other people for advice, and you kind of will settle on 1 or maybe 2 bikes. Once you narrow it down to these 2 bikes and you're trying to compare these 2, maybe they're a little bit different price, they're a little bit different features, you get to a point where your preferences start to take a priority. So you have this kind of wave where you are going through other people's bias, other people's experience, and then you're dipping down all the way to just the factual information. Kind of narrow down to those models, and now you're coming back up into the bias area, which is your own bias. So you're trying to tap in on other people's experiences, maybe other people's mistakes, something that they look back on and they're like, man, I really wish I would have got this bike. I wish I would have just jumped ahead and got this bike. Please just remember that it is your journey. Your journey is very unique, and there's no wrong way to do it. There's plenty of people who will buy a starter bike, a very small, inexpensive bike, and work their way up and have 5 to 7 bikes. And there's plenty of other people who don't start riding until later in life and they go straight to a full dresser bagger and that's their first bike. I see it a lot at the shop that this is a very big purchase for most people. It's a lot of money to spend to buy a motorcycle, and you want to kind of future-proof your decision. If you're spending $20, $25, $30,000, you don't want to regret that decision 6 months or 1 year later. So as you're future-proofing that decision, try to be very honest about what you're going to be using the bike for and lean on the people who know about these motorcycles and can say, oh, that's what you want to do with your motorcycle. I think this motorcycle is a good choice for you. At the end of the day, it's your decision to sign your name on the dotted line and say, yep, I'm picking this one. It's one of my favorite things about this community to see friends and close relatives come in together and go through this process together. I think it's such a heartwarming thing. We see it online in the comments. We see suggestions of, hey, I think you should go this way, or here's the good, bad, and ugly about this bike. And if you really dig deep, you can find a lot of different experiences from other people without having to experience those things yourself. And as you're going through that data, you kind of want to look at things that are personal to that person and be able to separate the objective truths from the biases within those experiences. And I know it can be a very stressful thing. I see it a lot happen at the shop, especially with first-time buyers or people who used to ride when they were younger and they're getting back into riding. It's a big purchase, but I encourage you to try to enjoy the process. You will never be in that position again, especially if it's your first bike. Once you jump off that cliff and you get your first bike, you'll never get to go back to having all those unknown unknowns. And now you're going to start building your own experience, which I'm sure you're going to share in the future with other people. We're going to help grow this community. But you guys let me know, put a comment down below and let me know, did you have a friend help you out? Did they steer you in the wrong direction? Are you one of the people that helps other people, and what kind of experience is that giving you? I'm always trying to get better at my job as being a consultant for people and being able to educate them on models, whether they're used, whether they're new, whether they're trying to decide what they're going to upgrade to. So for me as well, it helps me to hear experiences of other people. I'm only one guy. I can only own so many bikes and I can only have so many experiences myself. A lot of people will come to me and say, hey, what are people saying about XYZ? Because they know that I don't own that model. So I'm relying on other people's experiences to relay that to someone else. So I definitely want to hear what your experience is and how you've helped other people to grow this community. So before you go out there and buy a bike, before you trade in, make sure you talk to your friends, you get their experiences, you read online, you watch all the videos, you're watching your favorite channels and the people who are objective about reviews, and really get into the nitty-gritty. The more information you have, the better decision you're going to be able to make in the future. And if you continue this long enough, you're going to get to the point where all of this stuff just makes sense to you. And there's not so much a model comparison between this and that, because you know where your trajectory is, you know what your riding style is. And as you evolve as a motorcyclist, you're going to know, that's my next bike. So good luck out there, guys. I hope you get the bike that's perfect for you. If you have any questions about bikes, or if you're really on the fence, feel free to reach out to me, leave a comment here, shoot me a direct message on Instagram, and I'll be happy to talk about bikes for you. I love talking about motorcycles. I do it full time at work, and then I'm here at home talking about motorcycles. I'll see you guys later.